The human brain apparently becomes a comedy writer when consciousness shuts down. These sleepwalkers accomplished more ridiculous tasks while unconscious than most people manage while fully awake, proving that sometimes the best ideas come when you're not thinking at all. 1. A woman in Seattle sleepwalked to her kitchen every night for 3 months and prepared elaborate 5-course meals complete with appetizers, main courses, and desserts, plating everything perfectly and setting the dining table with candles and cloth napkins before returning to bed. She would wake up to find gourmet meals waiting for her, initially believing her boyfriend was surprising her with romantic dinners, until security cameras revealed she was cooking complex recipes while completely unconscious. Her sleepwalking meals were so sophisticated that she used techniques and ingredients she had never attempted while awake, somehow accessing culinary skills that her conscious mind didn't possess. The sleepwalking stopped when she moved apartments, but she had documented over 80 restaurant-quality meals she had prepared while asleep, including dishes that required hours of preparation and perfect timing that she couldn't replicate when awake. 2. One man in Florida sleepwalked outside and mowed his entire neighborhood's lawns every Tuesday night for 6 months, trimming hedges and weeding flower beds with professional precision while wearing only his underwear and work boots. Neighbors initially thought a landscaping company was providing free nighttime service until they installed security cameras and discovered their nearly naked neighbor performing detailed yard work at 2 a.m. with his eyes closed. His sleepwalking lawn care was so thorough that neighbors started leaving notes requesting specific landscaping tasks, which he would complete perfectly while unconscious, despite having no memory of reading the requests. He only stopped when he sleepwalked into a sprinkler system and woke up soaking wet in someone else's garden, with no recollection of how he had become the neighborhood's unconscious groundskeeper. 3. A college student sleepwalked to her computer every night and wrote detailed academic papers on subjects she had never studied, producing graduate-level research on topics ranging from quantum physics to medieval literature while her conscious mind slept. She discovered her nocturnal scholarship when she woke up to find completed assignments for classes she wasn't enrolled in, all written in her handwriting, but discussing concepts she had never encountered while awake. Her sleepwalking papers were so well researched and articulated that professors assumed she was auditing advanced courses and praised her for intellectual curiosity that exceeded her actual academic interests. The mystery was solved when her roommate caught her typing furiously with her eyes closed, producing complex thesis statements and citations for books she had never read, demonstrating that her unconscious mind had apparently been attending virtual lectures while she slept. 4. One woman sleepwalked to her art studio and created intricate paintings using techniques and styles completely different from her conscious artwork, producing abstract masterpieces that art critics later praised as revolutionary departures from her usual realistic portrait work. She would wake up to find new paintings that she didn't remember creating, initially suspecting someone was breaking into her studio until she set up cameras and discovered herself painting with remarkable skill while completely unconscious. Her sleepwalking art was so sophisticated that galleries began requesting her dream series specifically, not knowing that the paintings were literally created while she was dreaming and walking simultaneously. She attempted to recreate the techniques while awake, but found that her conscious mind couldn't replicate the fluid, innovative approaches her sleeping brain had developed, making her unconscious artwork more valuable than her deliberate creations. 5. A man in Chicago sleepwalked to his garage and built elaborate furniture pieces using power tools and complex joinery techniques, creating custom cabinets and intricate wooden sculptures while his family slept upstairs unaware of his nocturnal carpentry activities. He discovered his sleepwalking woodworking when he found beautifully crafted furniture pieces in his garage that he had no memory of making, initially thinking someone was using his workshop until his wife caught him operating a table saw with his eyes closed at 3 a.m. His sleepwalking craftsmanship was so precise that customers began commissioning midnight furniture specifically, believing that his unconscious woodworking produced more creative and technically superior pieces than his conscious efforts. The sleep crafting continued for 2 years until he nearly injured himself with a power planer, forcing his family to install locks on his workshop to prevent his unconscious access to dangerous equipment. 6. One woman sleepwalked outside and planted elaborate gardens throughout her neighborhood, creating sophisticated landscape designs with proper spacing, companion planting, and seasonal color coordination while wearing her nightgown and garden gloves. Neighbors woke up to find professionally designed flower beds and vegetable gardens that had appeared overnight, initially crediting a secret gardening fairy until security footage revealed their neighbor planting bulbs and seedlings with her eyes closed. Her sleepwalking gardening was so expertly planned that landscape architects studied her unconscious designs and discovered she had implemented advanced permaculture principles that she had never studied while awake. She continued sleep gardening for 3 seasons until she planted herself into someone's locked yard and woke up confused and muddy, surrounded by the elaborate garden maze she had created while unconscious. 7. A teenager sleepwalked to his computer and programmed complex video games while asleep, creating sophisticated code and game mechanics that impressed software developers who couldn't understand how a high school student had developed such advanced programming skills. He discovered his nocturnal coding when he found completed game projects on his computer that he didn't remember working on, initially thinking he had forgotten about his own projects, until he realized the programming techniques were far beyond his conscious abilities. His sleepwalking games were so innovative that tech companies offered him internships based on the code he had written while unconscious, not knowing that his sleeping brain had somehow accessed programming knowledge that his awake mind hadn't learned. The sleep programming ended when he accidentally deleted his operating system while coding unconsciously, forcing him to lock his computer at night to prevent further unconscious software development. 8. One man sleepwalked to his piano and composed complex musical pieces in styles ranging from classical to jazz, recording elaborate compositions that demonstrated musical theory knowledge he had never formally studied while conscious. He would wake up to find new sheet music written in his handwriting and audio recordings of himself playing sophisticated arrangements that exceeded his actual musical abilities and training. His sleepwalking compositions were so musically advanced that conservatory professors assumed he had hidden formal training and praised his nocturnal works as superior to his conscious musical efforts. Music publishers began requesting his sleep symphonies specifically, not realizing that his most acclaimed works were created by his unconscious mind, accessing musical knowledge that his awake brain couldn't comprehend or replicate. 9. A woman sleepwalked to her sewing room and designed elaborate costumes and formal wear, creating couture-level garments with complex construction techniques and artistic details that professional seamstresses found impressive and technically challenging. She discovered her nocturnal fashion design when she found completed evening gowns and intricate costumes that she had no memory of making, initially thinking someone was using her sewing equipment until she found security footage of herself working with advanced techniques while asleep. Her sleepwalking fashion creations were so sophisticated that costume designers for theater and film productions began commissioning her unconscious work, believing that her sleeping mind produced more creative and technically superior garments than her conscious efforts. The sleep sewing continued until she accidentally sewed her nightgown to a wedding dress she was creating, waking up attached to her own unconscious masterpiece. 10. One man sleepwalked outside and washed every car in his apartment complex parking lot, applying professional detailing techniques with soap, wax, and specialized cleaning tools while wearing his pajamas and rubber gloves. Residents initially thought their complex had hired a nighttime car washing service until they discovered their neighbor providing unconscious automotive detailing services with remarkable attention to interior and exterior cleaning. His sleepwalking car care was so thorough that residents began leaving notes requesting specific detailing services, which he would complete perfectly while asleep, despite having no conscious memory of automotive maintenance training. He only stopped when he sleepwalked into a busy street while attempting to wash a parked police car, waking up confused and soapy while explaining to officers that he had no memory of his unconscious car washing business. 11. A college student sleepwalked to the campus library and reorganized entire sections according to complex cataloging systems that librarians found more efficient than the existing organizational methods, reshelving thousands of books with precision that would have taken conscious workers weeks to complete. Library staff initially thought they had enthusiastic volunteers working night shifts, until security cameras revealed the student filing books and creating detailed organizational charts while completely unconscious. Her sleepwalking library science was so advanced that the university offered her a job in information management based on the systematic improvements she had made while asleep, not realizing that her unconscious mind had somehow mastered library organization principles that exceeded her conscious academic knowledge. The nocturnal reorganization ended when she sleepwalked into the rare book section and woke up surrounded by priceless manuscripts she had been categorizing while unconscious. 12. One woman sleepwalked to her kitchen and baked elaborate wedding cakes with professional-level decorating techniques, creating multi-tiered masterpieces with intricate sugar work and artistic details that pastry chefs found technically impressive and visually stunning. She would wake up to find completed cakes that looked like they belonged in upscale bakeries, initially thinking someone was using her kitchen until she installed cameras and discovered herself performing advanced cake decorating while asleep. Her sleepwalking baking was so sophisticated that wedding planners began requesting her unconscious creations specifically, believing that her sleeping mind produced more artistic and technically superior cakes than most professional bakers could create while awake. The sleep baking stopped when she covered her entire kitchen in fondant while creating a 7-tier cake unconsciously, waking up in a sugar-covered disaster that took hours to clean. 13. A man sleepwalked to his basement workshop and repaired broken electronics with expert precision, fixing smartphones, computers, and household appliances using soldering techniques and diagnostic skills that exceeded his conscious technical knowledge and training. Family members brought him broken devices and found them perfectly repaired the next morning, initially crediting his hidden technical talents until they discovered he was performing complex electronic repairs while completely unconscious. His sleepwalking electronics repair was so skilled that neighbors began leaving broken devices on his doorstep, which he would diagnose and fix perfectly while asleep, despite having no formal training in electronics repair. The unconscious repair service ended when he electrocuted himself while fixing a microwave in his sleep, waking up to find himself holding a live wire with no memory of his nocturnal electronics expertise. 14. One woman sleepwalked outside and directed traffic at busy intersections with professional precision, using proper hand signals and traffic control techniques to manage vehicles and pedestrians while wearing her nightgown and reflective safety vest she had somehow acquired. Police initially thought she was an off-duty traffic officer providing volunteer assistance until they realized she was managing complex intersections with her eyes closed and no memory of traffic control training. Her sleepwalking traffic direction was so effective that morning commute times actually improved during her unconscious shifts, with drivers praising the mysterious nighttime traffic controller who appeared to understand traffic flow better than some professional officers. She stopped when she directed traffic into a construction zone while asleep, waking up in the middle of a road closure with confused construction workers asking about her qualifications. 15. A teenager sleepwalked to his garage and performed complex automotive repairs on family and neighbor vehicles, replacing brake pads, rebuilding engines, and diagnosing mechanical problems with expertise that professional mechanics found impressive and technically accurate. He would wake up to find cars running better than before, initially thinking his mechanically inclined father was doing nighttime repairs, until security cameras revealed the teenager working under hoods with advanced techniques while completely unconscious. His sleepwalking automotive work was so skilled that neighbors began bringing him their mechanical problems, which he would solve perfectly while asleep despite having no formal training in automotive repair or access to diagnostic equipment. The unconscious mechanic work ended when he accidentally started a car while lying underneath it, waking up nearly crushed by a vehicle he had been repairing while asleep. 16. One woman sleepwalked to her garden and performed intricate topiary sculpting, creating elaborate animal shapes and geometric designs from hedges and bushes, using professional-level pruning techniques that landscape artists found remarkable and precisely executed. She discovered her nocturnal topiary art when neighbors began commenting on her suddenly sophisticated landscaping, initially thinking she had hired professional gardeners until she found security footage of herself sculpting hedges with her eyes closed. Her sleepwalking topiary work was so artistic that garden clubs invited her to demonstrate techniques she couldn't remember learning or performing, with her unconscious creations becoming local tourist attractions that people visited specifically to see her sleep-sculpted landscapes. The nighttime topiary ended when she sculpted herself into a hedge maze while unconscious, waking up lost in her own creation with no memory of how she had designed the elaborate garden puzzle. 17. A man sleepwalked to his home office and wrote detailed business plans for companies that didn't exist, creating comprehensive market analyses, financial projections, and strategic recommendations that business consultants found professionally sophisticated and potentially profitable. He would wake up to find completed business proposals that demonstrated knowledge of industries he had never worked in, initially thinking he had forgotten about consulting projects, until he realized the plans were for fictional companies with surprisingly viable business models. His sleepwalking business planning was so thorough that entrepreneurs began implementing his unconscious strategies, with several companies succeeding based on business plans he had written while asleep and couldn't remember creating. The nocturnal consulting ended when he wrote himself into a business partnership agreement while unconscious, waking up legally committed to a company he had invented while asleep. 18. One woman sleepwalked outside and taught elaborate dance classes to imaginary students, demonstrating complex choreography and providing detailed instruction in various dance styles while performing in her nightgown in empty parking lots and parks. Early morning joggers initially thought she was practicing for performances until they realized she was conducting full dance instruction sessions with her eyes closed, teaching sophisticated routines to audiences that existed only in her unconscious mind. Her sleepwalking dance instruction was so skilled that dance teachers studied her unconscious choreography and discovered innovative techniques that they incorporated into their conscious teaching methods. The sleep dancing stopped when she choreographed herself off a stage while performing an unconscious ballet routine, waking up in bushes with no memory of her nocturnal dance career. 19. A college student sleepwalked to the campus radio station and hosted sophisticated talk shows discussing topics he had never studied, conducting interviews with imaginary guests and providing commentary on subjects ranging from astrophysics to ancient history while broadcasting to empty studios. Station managers initially thought they had unauthorized late-night programming until they discovered the student operating professional radio equipment while completely unconscious, producing content that was more informative and entertaining than some of their conscious programming. His sleepwalking radio shows were so engaging that listeners began requesting specific topics, which he would research and discuss perfectly while asleep despite having no memory of broadcast training or the subjects he covered. The unconscious broadcasting ended when he interviewed himself while sleepwalking, waking up mid-conversation with no memory of the philosophical discussion he had been having with his own unconscious mind. 20. One man sleepwalked to his computer and designed elaborate websites for businesses that didn't exist, creating professional quality graphics, user interfaces, and e-commerce functionality using advanced programming and design skills that exceeded his conscious technical abilities. He would wake up to find completed websites that looked like they belonged to major corporations, initially thinking he had forgotten about client projects until he realized he was designing sites for fictional companies with surprisingly effective marketing strategies. His sleepwalking web design was so sophisticated that actual businesses began hiring him based on his unconscious portfolio, not knowing that his most impressive work was created by his sleeping mind, accessing design knowledge he couldn't replicate while awake. The nocturnal web development ended when he designed himself into a website while unconscious, waking up to find his personal information integrated into a fictional company's employee directory. 21. A woman sleepwalked to her basement and organized elaborate filing systems for documents she didn't own, creating complex categorical arrangements and cross-reference systems that professional organizers found more efficient than standard organizational methods. She would wake up to find her basement transformed into a sophisticated filing center, with documents sorted according to principles she had never studied, initially thinking someone was using her space for document storage until she realized she was unconsciously organizing papers that appeared from unknown sources. Her sleepwalking organization was so systematic that efficiency experts studied her unconscious methods and discovered innovative approaches to information management that they incorporated into professional organizational systems. The sleep filing stopped when she organized herself into a filing cabinet while unconscious, waking up wedged between documents she had no memory of categorizing. 22. One man sleepwalked outside and performed street magic shows for imaginary audiences, executing complex illusions and sleight-of-hand techniques that professional magicians found impressive and technically challenging to replicate while conscious. Early morning passersby initially thought he was practicing for performances until they realized he was conducting full magic shows with his eyes closed, performing sophisticated tricks for audiences that existed only in his sleeping mind. His sleepwalking magic was so skilled that magicians studied his unconscious techniques and discovered innovative approaches to classic illusions that they couldn't figure out how to perform while awake. The nocturnal magic ended when he made himself disappear while sleepwalking, waking up in a different location with no memory of how his unconscious mind had transported him there. 23. A teenager sleepwalked to her school's gymnasium and coached imaginary basketball teams through complex training drills, demonstrating advanced coaching techniques and strategic knowledge that sports professionals found sophisticated and tactically sound. Janitors initially thought she was a dedicated student athlete, practicing late until they realized she was conducting full team practices with her eyes closed, coaching players that existed only in her unconscious mind while executing drills that required professional-level sports knowledge. Her sleepwalking coaching was so advanced that actual coaches studied her unconscious training methods and discovered innovative approaches to player development that they incorporated into their conscious coaching strategies. The sleep coaching ended when she coached herself through a basketball hoop while unconscious, waking up tangled in a net with no memory of her nocturnal athletic career. 24. One woman sleepwalked to her kitchen and prepared elaborate multi-course meals for dinner parties she was hosting in her sleep, setting tables for dozens of imaginary guests and coordinating complex menu timing that professional caterers found logistically impressive and culinarily sophisticated. She would wake up to find her house arranged for elaborate entertaining, initially thinking she had forgotten about planned parties until she realized she was unconsciously hosting social events for guests that existed only in her sleeping mind. Her sleepwalking entertaining was so well organized that event planners studied her unconscious party coordination and discovered innovative approaches to hospitality that they couldn't replicate with conscious planning. The nocturnal entertaining ended when she served herself as the main course while unconscious, waking up dressed as a turkey with no memory of her unconscious dinner party preparations. 25. A man sleepwalked to his garage and built elaborate playhouses and treehouses using architectural principles and construction techniques that professional builders found structurally sound and creatively designed. He would wake up to find completed structures that looked like they belonged in luxury playgrounds, initially thinking neighborhood children were building in his yard until he discovered he was unconsciously constructing sophisticated play equipment while asleep. His sleepwalking construction was so professionally executed that playground designers studied his unconscious building methods and discovered innovative approaches to recreational architecture that they incorporated into commercial playground design. The sleep building ended when he constructed himself into a playhouse while unconscious, waking up trapped in a structure he had built around himself while asleep. 26. One woman sleepwalked outside and performed elaborate interpretive dance routines that told complex stories through movement, demonstrating advanced choreographic knowledge and artistic expression that dance professionals found emotionally powerful and technically sophisticated. Early morning witnesses initially thought she was rehearsing for performances until they realized she was creating full narrative ballets with her eyes closed, telling stories through dance that existed only in her unconscious imagination, while executing movements that exceeded her conscious dance training. Her sleepwalking storytelling through dance was so compelling that choreographers studied her unconscious movement and discovered innovative approaches to narrative dance that they couldn't conceive while awake. The nocturnal dance narratives ended when she danced herself into a fountain while unconscious, waking up soaking wet with no memory of the tragic ballet she had been performing about drowning. 27. A college student sleepwalked to the campus art studio and created elaborate sculptures using advanced techniques and artistic concepts that art professors found conceptually innovative and technically challenging to execute consciously. He would wake up to find completed artworks that demonstrated mastery of sculptural principles he had never studied, initially thinking other students were using his workspace until security cameras revealed him sculpting with sophisticated techniques while completely unconscious. His sleepwalking sculpture was so artistically advanced that galleries began exhibiting his unconscious work specifically, with art critics praising his sleeping mind's creative output as superior to his conscious artistic efforts. The nocturnal sculpting ended when he sculpted himself into a statue while unconscious, waking up covered in clay with no memory of the self-portrait he had been creating while asleep. 28. One man sleepwalked to his home office and wrote detailed technical manuals for equipment he had never used, creating comprehensive instruction guides with professional diagrams and troubleshooting sections that engineers found more useful than manufacturer documentation. He would wake up to find completed manuals that demonstrated technical knowledge he didn't possess while conscious, initially thinking he had forgotten about writing projects until he realized he was unconsciously documenting equipment operation procedures for machines he had never encountered. His sleepwalking technical writing was so accurate that manufacturers began consulting his unconscious documentation to improve their official instruction materials, finding that his sleeping mind produced clearer and more comprehensive guides than their professional technical writers. The nocturnal manual writing ended when he wrote himself into an instruction manual while unconscious, waking up to find detailed procedures for operating himself as if he were a piece of equipment. 29. A woman sleepwalked to her garden and performed intricate landscape architecture, designing sophisticated drainage systems and plant arrangements that demonstrated advanced horticultural knowledge and engineering principles that landscape professionals found environmentally sound and aesthetically pleasing. She would wake up to find her yard transformed according to permaculture principles she had never studied, initially thinking she had hired landscapers until she discovered she was unconsciously implementing complex ecological design while asleep. Her sleepwalking landscape architecture was so environmentally sophisticated that agricultural colleges studied her unconscious garden designs and discovered innovative approaches to sustainable landscaping that they incorporated into their conscious curriculum. The sleep landscaping ended when she landscaped herself into a garden bed while unconscious, waking up planted among vegetables with no memory of the ecological system she had been creating. 30. One man sleepwalked to his basement and performed elaborate chemistry experiments using proper safety protocols and advanced laboratory techniques, creating compounds and conducting analyses that chemistry professors found scientifically valid and methodologically sound. He would wake up to find detailed experimental results and properly documented procedures that demonstrated knowledge of analytical chemistry he had never formally studied, initially thinking someone was using his space as a laboratory until he realized he was unconsciously conducting sophisticated scientific research while asleep. His sleepwalking chemistry was so scientifically rigorous that researchers studied his unconscious experimental methods and discovered innovative approaches to chemical analysis that they couldn't conceive through conscious scientific planning. The nocturnal chemistry ended when he chemically analyzed himself while unconscious, waking up covered in test strips with no memory of the experiments he had been conducting on his own biological samples. 31. A teenager sleepwalked to her school's theater and performed elaborate one-person shows featuring multiple characters, demonstrating advanced acting techniques and theatrical knowledge that drama teachers found professionally sophisticated and emotionally compelling. Janitors initially thought she was a dedicated drama student, practicing late until they realized she was performing full theatrical productions with her eyes closed, playing multiple characters in stories that existed only in her unconscious imagination, while executing acting techniques that exceeded her conscious training. Her sleepwalking theater was so dramatically advanced that acting coaches studied her unconscious performances and discovered innovative approaches to character development that they incorporated into their conscious teaching methods. The nocturnal theater ended when she performed herself into a play while unconscious, waking up on stage with no memory of the tragic monologue she had been delivering about sleepwalking. 32. One woman sleepwalked to her computer and composed elaborate symphonies using professional music composition software, creating complex orchestral arrangements that demonstrated advanced musical theory knowledge and compositional techniques that music professors found harmonically sophisticated and structurally innovative. She would wake up to find completed musical scores that exceeded her conscious musical abilities, initially thinking she had forgotten about composition projects until she realized she was unconsciously creating symphonic works while asleep using software she had never learned to operate. Her sleepwalking composition was so musically advanced that orchestras began performing her unconscious works specifically, with music critics praising her sleeping mind's compositional output as superior to her conscious musical efforts. The nocturnal composing ended when she composed herself into a symphony while unconscious, waking up to find musical notation describing her own sleepwalking activities. 33. A man sleepwalked outside and performed elaborate urban planning, redesigning neighborhood layouts and traffic patterns using advanced city planning principles that urban development professionals found logistically sound and environmentally beneficial. He would wake up to find detailed neighborhood improvement plans that demonstrated knowledge of municipal planning he had never studied, initially thinking city planners were using his property for meetings, until he realized he was unconsciously developing comprehensive urban design proposals while asleep. His sleepwalking urban planning was so professionally sophisticated that city councils studied his unconscious development plans and discovered innovative approaches to municipal design that they incorporated into their conscious planning processes. The sleep planning ended when he planned himself into a city while unconscious, waking up surrounded by detailed maps showing himself integrated into the municipal infrastructure he had been designing. 34. One woman sleepwalked to her kitchen and performed elaborate food styling for imaginary photography shoots, creating sophisticated culinary presentations using professional plating techniques and artistic arrangements that food photographers found visually stunning and commercially viable. She would wake up to find elaborate food displays that looked like they belonged in gourmet magazines, initially thinking someone was using her kitchen for photo shoots, until she realized she was unconsciously creating professional food presentations while asleep, using ingredients she arranged according to principles she had never studied. Her sleepwalking food styling was so artistically advanced that culinary magazines began featuring her unconscious presentations specifically, with food critics praising her sleeping mind's aesthetic output as superior to her conscious culinary efforts. The nocturnal food styling ended when she styled herself into a food presentation while unconscious, waking up arranged on a plate with no memory of the artistic display she had been creating. 35. A college student sleepwalked to the campus observatory and performed complex astronomical observations using professional telescopes and recording equipment, conducting sophisticated celestial research that astronomy professors found scientifically valid and methodologically advanced. He would wake up to find detailed astronomical data and properly documented observations that demonstrated knowledge of astrophysics he had never formally studied, initially thinking graduate students were using the facility for research until security cameras revealed him operating advanced equipment while completely unconscious. His sleepwalking astronomy was so scientifically rigorous that researchers studied his unconscious observation methods and discovered innovative approaches to celestial data collection that they incorporated into their conscious research protocols. The nocturnal astronomy ended when he observed himself while sleepwalking, waking up looking through a telescope pointed at a mirror with detailed notes about his own unconscious behavior patterns. 36. One man sleepwalked to his garage and performed elaborate automotive customization, designing and installing sophisticated vehicle modifications using advanced mechanical engineering principles that automotive professionals found technically innovative and structurally sound. He would wake up to find vehicles transformed with custom modifications that demonstrated knowledge of automotive engineering he had never studied, initially thinking professional customizers were using his workspace until he realized he was unconsciously performing complex mechanical installations while asleep. His sleepwalking automotive work was so technically advanced that car manufacturers studied his unconscious modification techniques and discovered innovative approaches to vehicle design that they incorporated into their conscious engineering processes. The sleep customization ended when he customized himself into a vehicle while unconscious, waking up wearing automotive parts with no memory of the mechanical modifications he had been attempting on himself. 37. A woman sleepwalked outside and performed elaborate environmental restoration, removing invasive species and replanting native vegetation using advanced ecological principles that environmental scientists found scientifically sound and ecologically beneficial. She would wake up to find landscapes transformed according to restoration ecology principles she had never studied, initially thinking environmental groups were working in her area until she realized she was unconsciously implementing complex habitat restoration while asleep. Her sleepwalking environmental work was so ecologically sophisticated that conservation organizations studied her unconscious restoration methods and discovered innovative approaches to ecosystem management that they incorporated into their conscious conservation efforts. The nocturnal restoration ended when she restored herself into an ecosystem while unconscious, waking up camouflaged among native plants with no memory of the habitat she had been creating around herself. 38. One man sleepwalked to his home office and performed elaborate financial analysis, creating sophisticated investment portfolios and market assessments using advanced economic principles that financial professionals found analytically sound and potentially profitable. He would wake up to find detailed financial reports that demonstrated knowledge of market analysis he had never studied, initially thinking he had forgotten about consulting work until he realized he was unconsciously conducting complex economic research while asleep. His sleepwalking financial analysis was so professionally sophisticated that investment firms studied his unconscious market assessments and discovered innovative approaches to portfolio management that they incorporated into their conscious trading strategies. The sleep analysis ended when he financially analyzed himself while unconscious, waking up to find detailed reports evaluating his own economic value and investment potential. 39. A teenager sleepwalked to her school's science laboratory and performed elaborate biological research, conducting sophisticated experiments using proper laboratory protocols and advanced research techniques that biology professors found scientifically valid and methodologically innovative. She would wake up to find detailed experimental results and properly documented procedures that demonstrated knowledge of molecular biology she had never formally studied, initially thinking graduate students were using the facility until security cameras revealed her operating advanced equipment, while completely unconscious. Her sleepwalking biology was so scientifically rigorous that researchers studied her unconscious experimental methods and discovered innovative approaches to biological research that they incorporated into their conscious laboratory protocols. The nocturnal research ended when she researched herself while sleepwalking, waking up in a petri dish with no memory of the biological experiments she had been conducting on her own cellular samples. 40. One woman sleepwalked to her basement and performed elaborate archaeological excavation, carefully documenting and cataloging artifacts she unearthed using professional archaeological techniques that anthropologists found methodologically sound and scientifically valuable. She would wake up to find detailed excavation sites with properly preserved artifacts and comprehensive documentation that demonstrated knowledge of archaeological principles she had never studied, initially thinking researchers were working on her property until she realized she was unconsciously conducting sophisticated archaeological investigations while asleep. Her sleepwalking archaeology was so professionally sophisticated that museums studied her unconscious excavation methods and discovered innovative approaches to artifact preservation that they incorporated into their conscious archaeological practices. The sleep excavation ended when she excavated herself while unconscious, waking up buried in her own archaeological dig with no memory of the historical investigation she had been conducting. 41. A man sleepwalked outside and performed elaborate meteorological observations, setting up sophisticated weather monitoring equipment and conducting atmospheric research using advanced climatological principles that meteorologists found scientifically accurate and methodologically advanced. He would wake up to find detailed weather data and properly documented atmospheric observations that demonstrated knowledge of meteorology he had never formally studied, initially thinking weather researchers were using his area for studies until he realized he was unconsciously conducting complex atmospheric monitoring while asleep. His sleepwalking meteorology was so scientifically rigorous that weather services studied his unconscious observation methods and discovered innovative approaches to atmospheric data collection that they incorporated into their conscious forecasting procedures. The nocturnal meteorology ended when he weather monitored himself while sleepwalking, waking up covered in instruments with detailed measurements of his own atmospheric impact. 42. One woman sleepwalked to her garden and performed elaborate beekeeping, managing sophisticated hive systems using advanced apiary techniques that beekeeping professionals found methodologically sound and productively beneficial. She would wake up to find thriving bee colonies with properly maintained hives that demonstrated knowledge of apiary science she had never studied, initially thinking professional beekeepers were managing colonies on her property until she realized she was unconsciously conducting complex hive management while asleep. Her sleepwalking beekeeping was so professionally sophisticated that apiary organizations studied her unconscious hive management methods and discovered innovative approaches to bee colony care that they incorporated into their conscious beekeeping practices. The sleep beekeeping ended when she managed herself into a hive while unconscious, waking up covered in bees with no memory of the apiary system she had been creating around herself. 43. A college student sleepwalked to the campus engineering laboratory and built elaborate robotic systems using advanced programming and mechanical engineering principles that robotics professors found technically innovative and functionally sophisticated. He would wake up to find completed robots that demonstrated knowledge of mechatronics he had never formally studied, initially thinking graduate students were building projects until security cameras revealed him assembling complex machinery while completely unconscious. His sleepwalking robotics was so technically advanced that engineering firms studied his unconscious construction methods and discovered innovative approaches to robotic design that they incorporated into their conscious development processes. The nocturnal robotics ended when he built himself into a robot while sleepwalking, waking up partially mechanized with no memory of the cybernetic enhancements he had been attempting on himself. 44. One man sleepwalked to his basement and performed elaborate geological surveys, mapping underground formations and conducting soil analysis using advanced geological techniques that earth science professionals found scientifically accurate and methodologically sound. He would wake up to find detailed geological maps and properly documented soil samples that demonstrated knowledge of earth science he had never studied, initially thinking geologists were surveying his property until he realized he was unconsciously conducting complex geological investigations while asleep. His sleepwalking geology was so professionally sophisticated that geological surveys studied his unconscious mapping methods and discovered innovative approaches to subsurface analysis that they incorporated into their conscious geological assessment procedures. The sleep geology ended when he geologically surveyed himself while unconscious, waking up with detailed soil core samples taken from his own body, with no memory of the earth science he had been conducting on himself. 45. And finally, one woman sleepwalked to her computer and wrote detailed autobiographies of her sleepwalking adventures, documenting all her unconscious activities with remarkable accuracy and literary sophistication that exceeded her conscious writing abilities and memory of the events she described. She would wake up to find completed memoirs that perfectly documented sleepwalking incidents she had no conscious memory of experiencing, initially thinking someone else was writing about her until she realized she was unconsciously chronicling her own unconscious adventures while asleep. Her sleepwalking autobiography was so detailed and accurate that sleep researchers studied her unconscious documentation methods and discovered that her sleeping mind was somehow recording and analyzing her own unconscious behavior with scientific precision that her conscious mind couldn't replicate. The nocturnal autobiography project ended when she wrote herself into her own book while sleepwalking, waking up to find herself literally integrated into the manuscript as both the author and main character of her own unconscious literary creation. Apparently, the unconscious mind is like having a super talented intern who works the night shift but never tells you what they accomplished. These sleepwalkers prove that sometimes your best work happens when you're not even trying or awake. The real mystery isn't what people do while sleepwalking, but how they do it better than when they are conscious. Subscribe if you want more proof that sleep might be the ultimate productivity hack.